Come on down to Borley Rectory, the most haunted house in England. Bring the kids, bring Grams, bring the flippin' Queen. Bring your favorite industrial lathe machine. Borley has a ringing endorsement from the renowned paranormal investigator Harry Price as the best authenticated case in the annals of psychical research. And would Harry Price lie? Well, perhaps have a shafty at this. Borley Rectory caught my attention because it was clearly the inspiration behind the Borley Mansion area in Silent Hill 3, and they obviously used it because of its notorious reputation. Legends abounded around the place, which was what attracted the attention of Harry Price, who would later make the aforementioned claim of it being the most haunted house in England. Unfortunately, when one delves deeper into the ghost sightings, history, and Price's own methods of investigation, one quickly realizes that Borley Rectory isn't necessarily the most haunted house in England, as much as it is England's version of the Amityville Horror. The story begins in 1863 when the rectory was built by Reverend Henry Bull in an area 60 miles northeast of London in Essex County. The Bull family occupied the rectory for about 70 years and had many claims of paranormal phenomena occurring as they lived in the house. The most famous recurring sightings were a nun who would appear anywhere and at any time she bloody well liked, but always on July 28th and mostly along a path later to be named the Nun's Walk. The other regular phantom at the rectory was a coach with horses, and Harry Bull, Henry's son, would report seeing the ghost coach being driven by headless men. The locals either fully believed the Bull's claims or had encounters themselves, as it was a well-known place to avoid at dark. In 1928, the rectory was taken over by Reverend G.E. Smith and his wife after 12 other clergymen refused the post of rector of the area, presumably because of Borley's haunted reputation. G.E. Smith and his wife were professed skeptics of paranormal phenomena, but even they would admit to Price during his first investigation, that began in June of 1929, that they had seen some crazy things. During their time there, they heard seemingly disembodied whispers and footsteps. Their maids had seen the phantom nun. Strange lights would appear in the windows of an unused wing of the house for apparently no obvious reason. The ghost of Harry Bull would appear, and they reported seeing odd black shapes. Perhaps the most notable report from the Smith household was hearing a woman's voice that moaned and then yelled, "Don't, Carlos, don't!" According to Price, as he continued his investigation and interviews with the staff, he uncovered a veritable plethora of reports of paranormal activity, ranging from the typical, like footsteps, loud banging noises, sudden temperature changes in the air, pleasant and unpleasant odors, to the atypical, such as spontaneous displacement of objects, footsteps appearing in snow, and even spontaneous combustion in parts of the house. At dinner the night Price arrived, a glass of wine turned into a glass of ink. Price would report his own experiences with phenomena in the house, such as a cascade of objects that came tumbling down the stairs. He also conducted a seance without a medium and said that he acquired answers to his questions via disembodied rappings, where the spirit confirmed that it was Harry Bull and that he was the one causing all the paranormal ruckus solely because he wanted attention. Nearly 2 years later, Harry Price was granted an invitation to return to Borley by the new residents, the Foysters, who said that they were in the midst of paranormal misery. The two ladies of the house, Mary Ann and her daughter Adelaide, who was only 3.5 at the time, claimed to be accosted by all kinds of cheeky japes by the dead. Again, objects disappeared, to only sometimes reappear. Other objects were broken with no obvious explanation. Adelaide was locked in a room with no key, and Mary Ann had received a severe ghost punch to the eye socket. Mary Ann also began receiving strange messages mysteriously scrawled upon the rectory walls, which would come to be known as the Mary Ann messages. When the Foysters left, Harry Price decided to lease the rectory so he could conduct more thorough research. And unlike some paranormal investigators who dare to go it alone in notorious locations to risk the type of entity attack that only late 70s rock band Foreigner can appreciate, Price brought a team with him. A very large team of 40 amateurs after weeding through the 200 replies from his newspaper ad. I mean, after all, who needs credibility and experience? It's ghost hunting, not quantum physics. So, armed with his blue book of paranormal investigation procedures, some remote control movie cameras, still cameras, steel tape measures, chalk, and spirit boards, Price and his crack team of 40 amateurs felted up their shoesies and went to work. He had his assistants take their official paranormal investigation chalk and draw circles around any and all movable objects in the rectory lest some ghost move a movable object without their knowledge. He also instructed them to record any other kind of paranormal phenomena, particularly any markings or messages appearing on the walls. Of Price's newly acquired assistants, 3 of them were mediums, S.H. Glanville and his son and daughter, Roger and Helen. These 3, through several spirit board sessions from October of 1937 to March of 1938, produced some messages that came from Harry Bull and the nun. The ghost of Harry Bull said that there was a nun and a monk buried in the garden. The ghost of the nun allegedly communicated to Roger and Helen, saying that her name was Marie-Laure, and that she was a French Catholic nun who had left her convent in Le Havre, France, to marry one of the Waldengraves, a Catholic family with ties to Borley. However, she was strangled by her would-be husband and her body was buried beneath the cellar floor. She requested to have a proper funeral mass so she could be put to rest. Helen Glanville would also receive a message via spirit board that said that Sunex Amures and one of his men were going to burn down the rectory that night at 9 p.m., and that proof of the murder that occurred there that was responsible for all the activity would be revealed. But nobody came to burn down the rectory that night. Nothing happened. In fact, very little of anything from the whole investigation actually happened. In fact, some of the 40 assistants left the project due to suffering from paranormal ennui. But how is that even possible with the history and the previous encounters? Well, for one thing, no more messages occurred after the Marianne messages. Marianne Foister did admit to hating the rectory and wanting to move. Price himself had even noted that during his time with the Foisters, all poltergeist activity seemed to occur when Marianne was alone or absent, leading him to suspect her of staging them. As for the activity that the Smiths reported, Mrs. Smith would sign a statement in 1949 that she suspected that Price had staged some of the poltergeist activity during his investigation at their time at the rectory. You see, she and her husband knew of its reputation, and rather than try to get evidence of the hauntings, their original intention was to prove to the public that the rectory wasn't haunted. The strange light that would appear in the unused wing of the rectory turned out to be the reflection from the light of passing trains. The voice that moaned and screamed, "Don't, Carlos, don't," could have easily come from some passers-by outside in the rectory cemetery. The Smiths also believed that the locals had staged some of the activity to try to get the Smiths to leave, since it was known that many of them did not want a new rector after not having one for many years. Mrs. Smith said that she was surprised that upon Price's arrival at the house at how much paranormal activity suddenly began happening. She even said that the whole wine to ink phenomena occurred after someone at dinner made the comment that much of the paranormal activity could be accomplished by someone pulling sleight-of-hand tricks. And had that been Price's doing, it certainly would make sense even to someone who takes paranormal investigation seriously. The dead may have strange powers once freed from the confines of their mortal coil, but I highly doubt transmogrification of liquor is one of them. I mean, it's definitely never come up on the Ghost Adventures.
Try the wine.
And this wasn't the only time Harry Price was accused of sleight-of-hand tricks to convince others of a poltergeist's presence. Charles Sutton, who was a writer for the Daily Mail, enjoyed taking a piss on Price, and claimed that he had caught him faking paranormal phenomena on several occasions. One occasion supposedly happened at Borley. Sutton alleged that while he was at the rectory, a large pebble hit him on the head. He said he seized Price and found his pockets full of bricks and pebbles. When Sutton tried to create a story around this, the newspaper's lawyer and the editor killed it, stating that it was Sutton's word against Price's and another witness. That other witness, Lucy Kay, was Price's own secretary and said she had no recollection of the incident. She additionally theorized that poltergeist activity actually followed Harry Price around because it didn't seem to happen when he wasn't present. And while that isn't impossible in the world of paranormal investigation, It's still kind of a barmy thing to say, especially when everyone knows that your job security is on the line. Makes the person look a bit suspicious. Unfortunately for Price, even S.H. Glanville, the medium and one of Price's recruits, didn't fully believe that Borley was haunted or in Price's credibility. Glanville accused Price of having bollocks methods of investigation, being unorganized for not having something as simple as a common logbook, and hiring unqualified investigators. Glanville even dismissed the planchette evidence, stating that he believed that the responses were coming from the subconscious of the spirit board users, in essence, blaming the ideomotor effect for making use of the user's knowledge of the Borley legends and then letting their imaginations fill in the blanks. He did not believe that Mary-Lair or Sunix Amures existed. He reported that during his time at the rectory, he did experience some unexplained auditory mess, but offered that it could have been explainable noises from outside on Borley's grounds. Sometime after Harry Price died, his research at Borley Rectory was re-examined by Eric Dingwall, Kathleen M. Goldney, and Trevor H. Hall. While it's interesting to note here that while Hall was a skeptic in the paranormal all over the place, Dingwall and Goldney were psychical researchers, and all three of them alleged that Price's so-called evidence was fraudulent. In 1956, all three of them took a collective piss on Harry Price in their book, The Haunting of Borley Rectory, where they essentially accused him of being a madcap shambleton. He magnified events so that they would seem paranormal and omitted debunked phenomena. He had dismissed any accounts from people who had lived at the rectory that never experienced anything paranormal, and all of his data had been entirely subjective. Also, many of his paranormal accounts had taken place outdoors, where it's much easier to mistake the natural for the supernatural. And again, Dingwall, Goldney, and Hall reiterated that much of the reported phenomena that had occurred had only occurred during Price's stay at the rectory. And yet, while they didn't trust Price's findings, they also did not completely dismiss the possibility that Borley Rectory was haunted. But what of all the sightings reported by the Bull family? The frequency of seeing the nun on her walk, or of the headless coachman? It's funny when you realize that Harry Price didn't seem to catch much evidence of these popular hauntings like you'd imagine he would, especially when one was reported to always happen on the 28th of July, which just seems to lend more credence to him being something of a gormless paranormal ponce. And as for the Bull family, well, the sisters especially were known to not bat on a full wicket, as they say. It's not known exactly who made up the legends that explain the hauntings at Borley, and there are several variations of them, most of them involving a nun and a lay monk running away to a medieval monastery on the Borley site to be married. In every variation of the legend, the nun is killed in a variety of ways, and in nearly every version her body is interred within the walls of the monastery. However, there is no historical evidence to back up any of this. In 1938, it was proven that no ecclesiastical building had ever been on the Borley site besides a 12th century church. That being the case, there's little reason for a lay monk to have been there awaiting his nun lover. Also, no monastery walls to be interred within. But I guess none of this is surprising. People love their church scandals as spicy as they can get them, and when it's a situation that would be very hard to prove or disprove, people will claim anything. It's an unfortunate truth about humanity that it loves scandals, and is happy to believe and spread a scandalous story regardless of the lack of evidence or statistical possibility. And so much the better if such a story lines one's pockets, earns him or her a modicum of fame, furthers an agenda, or confirms a narrative. And when it comes to paranormal investigation, which, despite its best efforts, may never shake the label of pseudoscience, the more one doesn't spread unconfirmed information, the better. And yet, although there's a lot going against Borley Rectory being haunted, very few people involved in any investigations, whether under Price or not, have ever wanted to definitively say that the hauntings were total codswallop. In 1953 and 1954, newspapers would still report sightings of ghosts appearing at the site. In a schoolyard at Wellingborough, alleged ghost sightings were reported, and it just so happened that bricks from the Borley Rectory had been buried there previously. And while it's unlikely that a wayward nun was killed and buried within the walls of whatever building that stood at the rectory site, one provocative thing that Price did find were human remains that were buried in Borley's cellar, as indicated through Helen Glanville's spirit board session. Medical experts could not conclude that they were of female origin, and it seemed unclear how they got there. Based on this one image, it seems more possible that whoever they are, they had died of a tooth infection that made its way to the brain instead of the handiwork of a soured lover. On October 31st, 1998, the Borley Ghost Society was formed by Vincent O'Neill, the adopted son of Marianne Foister and her second husband. Marianne was very secretive of her past and never told Vincent of any of the 2,000 paranormal occurrences at Borley when the Foisters lived there. He actually only found out about them after doing research into the family tree sometime after she had passed away. From that time on, O'Neill dedicated much of his life to researching the rectory, making the society a repository for all things Borley related, and earning himself the nickname Son of Borley. Vincent believed that some of the paranormal happenings were authentic. He also said that his mother exhibited psychic sensitivity throughout her life, which made her a target for the ghosts, possibly explaining why the messages scrawled on the rectory walls and other phenomena only occurred around her. In 2004, O'Neill disbanded the society, mostly out of respect for his mother, stating that she never would have approved of the added publicity of the Borley Rectory hauntings anyway. And I think that also adds credence to what Marianne Foister experienced at her time there, since people never lie about hauntings to avoid attention. So what of Borley now? Surely with all our newfangled bits and bobs and its reputation, we could send a group of credible ghost hunters there to do an episode for their syndicated program on the telly. Well, no you can't. Borley Rectory burned down in 1938 when it was owned by Captain William H. Gregson. A stack of books fell and knocked over a paraffin lamp, and that was the end of it as the flames claimed all of Borley's secrets. So what do you think? Was Borley all a myriad of separate hoaxes? Or was it authentically haunted but suffered from a muddying of evidence due to overblown legends and fabricated reports by attention-seeking nutters? It's definitely a cautionary tale to any investigators who are truly looking for the truth and value integrity over possible fame. What if Borley Rectory really was the most haunted place in England, only not by a nun or even Harry Bull, but by some poor soul whose true story never had a chance to be known because the living were too busy making up spicy stories to sensationalize the whole thing for the sake of fame? What if the real story behind the hauntings was actually more intriguing than the cow slaver about some nun and her illicit lover? While we'll never have the answers to any of these questions, I think it's important to remember that for as much as we think we know about how hauntings happen, or even what qualifies as an appropriate trigger, we still cannot reproduce them under controlled conditions, nor produce them in the field whenever we see fit, making it impossible to know everything, and even kind of silly to theorize when the conditions present with only legends. The world of the paranormal is exactly that, leaving a wide, gaping hole to hide in for many mysteries we have yet to even imagine. Hopefully you liked my crash course on Borley Rectory. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to haunt my channel, and by all means, feel free to leave me a lame joke in the comments.